The Deviant issue number one. That's right, folks. We're back at it with the latest horror comic from James Tynion the Fourth. This time around, he is working with Joshua Hickson as the artist. And it's Christmas time, everybody. Get into the spirits. Go buy a big tree, put some ornaments on it, and just celebrate Christmas because it's a Christmas horror story. Hooray! Finally! I am always fascinated by the next Tynan project. He is a guy I think is interesting. Made some weird choices in his career, made books that aren't that interesting. The stuff of his I like is the more like playing with the extraterrestrial conspiracy theory of the world, the blue books, the Department of Truths. But sure, a Santa Claus serial killer, I'm here for it, I guess. This book's very interesting. I'm not going to say it's a masterpiece or it's brilliant by any stretch of the imagination. It does the job, I suppose. There is a lot of self-insert for Tynan in here, and I think a lot of different ways, which is what he does perfectly. If you have read any single James Tynan book, the main character will have glasses. He will be an openly gay character who is either dating somebody, married to somebody, or a kid figuring out who he is. This one gets really into his headspace. It's very interesting in that way. We open up this book. It's Chicago, December 2023. We see people in like a store. It's like a big mall. Kids can get their picture with Santa. There's an elf taking pictures for them, and we see this sad guy with glasses. His name is Michael, and he's like there with his boyfriend, and his boyfriend's like, where's your head at? What are you thinking right now? And then we get like a page of just Michael explaining how when he was like in high school, he worked at like a store where he'd have to like wrap gifts at the Christmas season, and he was never really good at it, but he still did it, and it's like, maybe there was something wrong with me. I could just never learn it. That's kind of the theme of this book, which I think there are worse people that could tackle this than Tynan. The Deviant can mean a couple of things. It's the serial killer. It's also someone who is homosexual is kind of what we're talking about here. So, okay, see what's going on there. We cut to Milwaukee in December of 1973, so 50 years earlier. Same kind of department store. Some lady who works there closes it up. She has to go back to get something, so she heads in. She's walking around. She hears like some noise creeping off in the night, like somebody's in there. She goes to check it out, and there is a man that is like dead, hanging on, or he's like strapped into like the chair that Santa would normally sit in. His eyes have been cut out, and it's like a murder thing. It's like a serial killer murder thing. A big thing that, artists like talking about and comic creators like talking about too. There's not much dialogue in this book, so it's doing a lot of the heavy lifting from Hickson, which makes it work. Like, his style definitely lends itself to this type of story, and it's kind of fun. I have been working on like a Christmas story for a while now, like my own kind of Christmas story, so I'm getting the sense that like it's up in the air right now. People are like, we could make an iconic Christmas story, so that's kind of cool. We cut to some time later in Milwaukee, and we got some like police guys headed towards this barn because there's something suspected going on in there. They find blood trails leading to this barn. They head inside, and there's a bunch of little boys strung up. They're naked. Their genitals have been mutilated, and they're covered in blood and like Christmas lights and stuff. It's disgusting. And then one of the officers sees somebody fleeing the scene, so he goes to chase after them. But through all of the snow and hard fall that's coming from it, they lose sight of him. So the police officer like falls down a hill, he trips, but he manages to find his light where he shines it directly onto the Deviant, which is a man dressed up as Santa with a mask covered in blood. And you're like, that's pretty cool. I'll say like that image is really powerful, just like seeing the Deviant and the flashlight shining. That's like a really good looking page with the snow falling down. My goodness. So then we cut to Milwaukee in December of 2023, and this is where we realize, oh, Michael is here to investigate or like talk to the Deviant killer, and this is the guy that they found that killed all those boys back in the day. So then it just becomes like Michael talking to, his name's Randall Olson. He talks to Randall about like why he did the things he did. And this is also where we learn Michael's a comic book writer. And that makes Randall go, oh, that's so stupid. Like, it's so stupid. He's like, yeah, you'd be surprised how dumb it is. Comic books are weird these days. almost like Tynion's talking about like how the industry was supposed to be one thing for him and now it's not. So now he can't make his books. He has to go harder and do real stuff like this, I guess. I don't know. I couldn't care less about that part of the plot. I wonder if this is like based on like a real thing, something similar to a real thing. Clearly it's like kind of fake, because who would let like an amateur comic book writer just show up to talk to a serial killer? That's probably not real. But I could definitely see Tynion taking inspirations from like a real case in the area he grew up in and trying to be inspired by that. I've been reading a lot of Tynion stuff. I covered a lot of Blue Book, and I've covered a lot of Something's Killing the Children and Department of Truth. I think when you start to see the classics forming from Tynion, you get like a picture of like something weird happened to this kid when he was young, and that formed who he is today. So now he feels like he's different, an outsider. And this conversation of Randall and Michael, a lot of it is just like, what does it mean to be gay growing up? And you realize like the first time Michael heard like, men can have sex with men was about like this deviant killer that grew up in his neighborhood, and he would like rape little boys and stuff, and that kind of was like the first time he like heard that act being perceived, and it was like as a disgusting act of just like a pedophile destroying lives. And I was like, yeah, the first time I heard it was like a different thing. It was kind of just like more pleasant, but I guess it doesn't matter. It's all kind of bad. And then that's how they just brand you, and they think all this stuff is bad and gross, and then you become a deviant because you start feeling different things than the other little boys in the area. I'm like, okay, Tynion, I know what you're doing. I have no issue with you doing this. I feel like this is something you want to talk about, and I get that completely. Like, Randall is like a queer serial killer, something that was kind of common back then. And there is something to explore there, I suppose, so I'm not going to be mad at you for doing that. It's just very interesting that we're doing this now, because it kind of feels like a lot of your other work, and that's kind of boring, and it's kind of lame. So Michael wants to turn this story, if there is one, into a comic book, or Tynion wants to turn this story, if there is one, into a comic book. And that's when Randall's like, well, I was framed and set up. I knew these boys. I loved these boys. They were so innocent before they got, the fear of God slapped into them. So if you want to tell me what's really going on, or you have anything else, like, I'd like to know what's going on here. So does Michael think that this guy is not the killer? I don't know. Maybe. So he leaves the prison. His boyfriend comes to pick him up. Clearly he's still like a sad sack, and he's like, I don't know, you didn't have to get me. It was very strange just absorbing all that information. It felt very familiar. Dirk's like, familiar? What? Yeah, familiar. So they drive by like a place selling Christmas trees, and cut back to Chicago, where the guy from earlier who was dressed up as the elf, getting his costume on, getting all ready, and he's just like, all right, time to hit the streets and be a cool guy. And that is when he hears something in the hall, and it's a new deviant killer coming to kill this elf. Cool. That's where the book ends. Cool. I don't know. I actually don't know if I liked this. I think it's a lot of self-insert for Tynion, which is what he does well. The artwork is really fun, and the Christmas theme does make it kind of cool, but then it just kind of... It's less a Christmas story than it is a story that takes place during Christmas, where the themes of Christmas don't matter and you could replace them with anything else and it would still have the same impact. I guess Santa could be like a representation of like taking a pure image and like, crucifying it to make it disgusting. I don't know. That could be the case, but it doesn't really feel like it. I think read it. There is something here that is interesting, and these types of stories are really cool. And like the other thing in comic books is like the modern update of like what a crime like comic book was back in the day. So I don't know, man. Maybe because I've just read so much Tynion, I just see the beats of his work coming out through and through, and that's kind of boring. I don't know. Not sold. So the Deviant issue number 1, I'm going to give a 6 out of 10. Now, thank you everyone for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And as always, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.